In a recent video, I responded to a friend of mine with a request about what I thought numbers would be. As we're seeing numbers throughout the day and getting these hits, how do we track them down? And so I made a video about how I did the 747 and suggested how his might work. His is a 144. And he came back at me and threw a couple of more ideas and said, hey, this is where I think I get it from. There's some sevens involved. It sounds like it's the book of Revelation, that there's some numbers in there in thousands. And I was like, well, you know what? Let me track that down. I've got a little time on my hands here, so let me go look at it very specifically and see what I can do. I have not been in the book of Revelations for a long time. I'm really focused in Genesis and a numbering system that I can't quite figure out. As I get into Revelations, I see the numbering system I think is resolved. I think that I might be able to take what I'm learning here and go work up there. So I've gone down this rabbit hole. Here, my name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. All right, and if you're familiar with my analysis and what I'm doing here, I'm interpreting the Bible. There's a very specific way to interpret all material from antiquity where it reveals a very common teaching between all of them. That's when we cease to be a divider. You look here, you see that I'm working on things and I'm pulling up. I don't have it all numbered out here. I'm doing a lot of rework on this. I just downloaded this the other day and started going through it. And I probably should talk just real quickly on those numbers right there that you're seeing in the coloring and whatnot. That as I'm going through Genesis, what I've discovered is a very tight numbering pattern that's going on and ways of mining those numbers. And all of these green numbers right here, they represent a good place in life. They're pulling up numbers to continually repeat a grid. These numbers do not mean what they 7 is not 7 of anything. 15 is not 15 of anything, or anything like that. All of them represent a mental space where we were detached from life. We were happy kids, naked, unashamed, in the Garden of Eden when day 7 was repeated 3 times. And from there, that number sequence goes out in a very elaborate process to gather things up. But moreover, in the background, names are repeated the exact amount of times that tells you whether they are good or. Look what happens if we go from day 7. What we've got going on is day 8, first sin. Then we can jump up 11. 13 is 1 over 12. 16 is 1 over 15. 18 is 1 over 17, etc. If we go through here, we'll see in Genesis, wicked is repeated exactly 8 times. Creature is repeated 8 times. Thigh is repeated 8 times. Sodom is repeated 21 times, and so on. So, and then 2 and 9 right here, I've got still unknown. I think I've got those resolved based on this recent work here. So, yeehaw. There's a lot of things where I've reworked and went around, or not reworked, but just identified and then put some stuff in here. But first, I want to back up and say, for everybody following along, there is it's a video I put up that talks about the commonality between the stories, that we're finding common elements in there that are hard to see. And in this case, we've got books. There's a teaching that's happening that I'm going to talk about right here. So I'm going to return to that for a second here. I'll post a link to the video below where I talk about this a bit more. The Tablet of Fate right here from the Enuma Elish. This is the Babylonian creation story, much older than Genesis. And there's a Tablet of Fate. The Tablet of Fate, as we begin to interpret the material, what it basically comes down to is whatever your belief system is. You have an original belief system that you must lose, and you must get a new Tablet of Fate as far as the Enuma Elish is concerned. Or, no, what happens in this one is there's one Tablet of Fate. First, it goes to the early self, and then that early self has to be destroyed, the Tablet of Fate removed from them and given to the new self, which that represents your belief systems. Your old beliefs have to be destroyed and your new beliefs have to take over. This is how we live our life. That is what the Tablet of Fate is. It's the rules and then the fate as a result. But it's all mental. This is your belief system, your bundle of memories right there that you live through. That is your Tablet of Fate. Now, if we go through other material, what we begin to see is stories that sound different, but they need to be interpreted in a variety of ways. In Exodus, in the King James Version, we're going to find that we've got a Book of the Covenant, as well as the tablets of stone, the tables of stone, the 10 Commandments. When we get into Joshua, all of these are King James Version. What we have is, this book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night. What is that? This is the things you should believe in. Observe, focus on that. Observe and do according to all that is written therein, for then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall have good success. You focus on what you need to do and stop focusing on what you don't. And change your belief system as well, though. The book of the law, in this case, this book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. He's being handed the new book of the law, the update. Jeremiah, King James Version. Then the Lord put forth his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said to me, Behold, I have put my words into your mouth. Then the Lord reached out and touched my mouth and said, There, I put words in your mouth. So you've got the belief system. They're not words for you to speak. This is a mental process. It's not for you to teach other people. It's for you to teach yourself. What do I need to do? Ezekiel, we get down into there. Moreover, he said to me, Son of man, eat what thou findest. Eat this scroll. What did it say up here? This is the good part. You could see that this is, well, what is it? And when I looked, behold, a hand was sent to me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein, and it spread it before me, and there was written within and without. So there's a scroll with stuff written all over it, and what was written on it was the lamentations and mourning and woe. The fates. That's like the tablet of fates. He says, eat this roll. So you're going to believe that. We get down to Revelations, and what did we just have? I went through Revelations, and we have the Lamb's Book of Life. Yep, it's going to follow the same pattern. So basically what we have down here is the Tablet of Fate, Babylonian, Marduk, Enuma Elish. These are all the exact same thing when you interpret it. The Tablet of Fate, Book of the Covenant, Jewish, Moses, Exodus. Tablets of Stone, Jewish, Moses, Exodus. Book of the Law, Jewish, Joshua. Words in your mouth, Jewish, Jeremiah. Eat this scroll, Jewish, Ezekiel. Book of Life of the Lamb, Christian, Revelations. You want it in plain language? The agreements. From the book, The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. He'll put it in plain language for you right there. That's what all of them mean. This is the beliefs that you live through. Okay, do we see that that is there in Revelations? And when you're interpreting, you have to be very careful about certain things. You're going to find some variations in how we're being taught what to do in ways that make it so that they really do sound different than they really are. In this case, what we have for Revelations there, it tells us the Lamb's Book of Life. It's mentioned several times throughout there. It's also called the Book of Life of the Lamb. So that's what I put down here. The Book of Life of the Lamb. You're the Lamb. You're the one going on a peering pathway. Then this is what you do. And if you go to the 10 Commandments, there are 10 things there. If you don't interpret those, if you treat them in the physical world, you get the 10 Commandments. Quite frankly, they're very shallow rules of life. If you use them and interpret them and put them into a place in a mental hierarchy and treat them all as analogs, they become much more rich in a way to how to live, but they must be interpreted. In this case, what do we have? That you don't see anything that says what goes into the Book of Life. It's completely different. What it tells you is what not to put in. There shall in no wise enter into it anything that defiles. Okay, stop. What's the Book of Life? What are we looking for? We're looking for the kingdom of heaven within. The Book of Life is what's going to take us there. The Lamb's Book of Life is going to take us to happiness. So, you don't want anything in there that's going to defile that pathway. Does it make you unhappy? Don't do it. Quit. And whatsoever worketh abomination that works against your goal that you're carrying with you, or maketh a lie that is deceptive within you. But they which are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. What this tells me is that pretty much anything goes except for these things that interfere with that pathway to inner peace. Yeah, it's complete in that way. How incredible, huh? All right, I'm going to do some more comparison between this and Babylonian works. Now, bearing in mind, this is the last book of the Bible. This is very downstream from Genesis by 1,500 to 2,000 years. Then tack on to that the further age of the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian works. Okay, first of all, what I've got here is I've got the Enuma Elish, a part of it tacked in here, right into this chapter 12. Now, chapter 12, I'm going to say 12 is a good number, and I'm starting to see something deeper in here that might be something fun to look at. What I've done is I've pre-identified some of these numbers. 50 and 7, the way that works, 50 is a good number and 7 is a good number. So you put those two together and it doesn't sound like 50 or it doesn't sound like 7 being repeated all the time. But you add them up and it's still good. So there appeared a great wonder in a good place. This is upstairs in the mind, and a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now this is playing out in the psyche, so this is a part of us. A woman would be an inner being, not a consciousness, but an offspring of thought, or, an inner self. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pained to be delivered. That sounds like it harkens back to Genesis, that you will give pain in childbirth as the punishment. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. You see, red dragon is repeated 13 times in this book of Revelation, which means that it fits the category of a bad thing. In case you missed it, in case you're not sure and you know the numbering grid and you have this memorized deep enough, I'm using the computer, but if you have it memorized deep enough and you knew that was said 13 times, you would know that it's bad. Having 7, I'm not sure. 59 is still an odd one. I'm still dialing things in. Heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew in the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. 81. Earth looks like a bad place. Earth is going to be the physical life. We don't want to live in the physical world. We want to live in the heavenly world, the heavenly realm. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So this is us getting ready. This is like being in the child. This at 12. Okay, this is like we are getting ready to give birth to a child. It's starting over again. There's not a creation story, and temptation is ready, waiting there. The temptation of life, dragon, stood before the birth, about ready to come, ready to devour the child and ruin your experience. But she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. 5 is a good number. And her child was caught up in God unto his throne, pure. 45, these are pure states. And the woman fled into the wilderness. 4, that's a good thing. Where did Jesus go after he was baptized? He went into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared for with God, that they should feed her there for 1,260 days. Look, that's a strange number. I would look at that if I don't know why it says 60 in here, if that's a purposeful translation. It would have been in the minds of somebody that had it memorized. 60 would have been exactly the same as 60. We just don't use it, so got to be careful on the computer. Anyway, that comes out to 1,260, or a 1,000, or a 200, or a 60, or a 12 and a 60. In all cases, those numbers add up to something that is on the list of good analogs that were gathered up over time, which makes them equal to 40. They're all from that same place. They're analogous to that same location. They just start adding them up or taking them down and making it look like, well, these are a lot different from each other. When they're not, they're pulling from the same pool and just jumbling them up, the same ones over and over again to make them look different. But it's the same numbers being jumbled. At some point, that's a pattern. Equal analog to 40, compared to Jesus in 40 days in the wilderness, 4 after crossing baptism. Yeah. Okay, so I put that in. Those are my notes actually right there. I got to make sure I highlight that. These are what. Let me just get rid of them for now. Okay, and the woman fled into the wilderness, and there she had a place prepared of God, and they should feed her there for a time of purity. And there was war in heaven up in the stairs. Michael, good things, and angels good, fought against the dragon. We've got a mental conflict in our mind. The heaven is up in our mind. That is where we want to reside. We have conflict, good and bad, and the dragons fought with the angels back and forth, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. Turmoil in the kingdom of heaven within. That's my note right there. Turmoil in the kingdom of heaven within. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. See that they're 13:8:8. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there because I just want to now go back and talk about, well, let's read the Enuma Elish first, the comparative part, and then talk about it. The generation of gods would gather together for wild revels. What this represents, the wild generation, or the generation of gods that were gathering together for wild revels in the Enuma Elish, represents our early self and our early beliefs, and we're just out of control. We're not, we've judged things, and we've got mental turmoil. So they proved bothersome to Tiamat. Tiamat is the inner being, the inner self. Up here we had who? The woman fled into the wilderness. Down here we have Tiamat. It's a different thing. They're hullabaloo. So these gods, their hullabaloo echoed. All this commotion proved unsettling to Tiamat's inner being. We feel inner turmoil. And she was bothered by all of their activity within Anderuna. Anderuna is the dwelling place of the gods where you go hang out, your mind space. Down here we had what? And prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And she was bothered by all their activity within Anderuna. There was nothing Apsu could do to mitigate their carousing. That's the earlier god. There was nothing Tiamat could say to quiet them down, and no matter how troublesome their conduct became to her, regardless of how rowdy things were, she just put up with it. Okay, you see the element there that's the same, though. This mental activity is bothersome here. We can make the comparison and say that's the same thing that's happening here. This mental conflict, the dragons and the angels, this represents the yes I will, no I won't. I'm going to change. Damn it, I don't. I'm failing. I'm doing good. I'm this is happening. That's happening. It's a mental conflict. All right, there's another couple variations in there, of course. We see in the Tiamat story, there's already conflict. There's things going on. Marduk has not been developed. The hero is not there. In the other story, we see two things going on. There's somebody that's being developed that's going to be the hero of the story, but it's not really identified as a hero. It's just somebody that's going to be able to rule with an iron. I'm in charge. I'm no deviation here. So there's the development of the Marduk, the returned element hero right there in the midst of all of the commotion. And we're going to see that in the Enuma Elish too, but they're not structured necessarily side by side in all places. And the ones like that become more difficult to see because you just have to really be understanding the conceptual part and already that they're fitting on a template. If you know what the template steps are, you could look at something going on and better identify what it is. And that's all I can say is it works that way. Here, right there we had we had an example of the god who couldn't mitigate their arousing. And if you were to read through the Enuma Elish, you would find that god Apsu, who was the creator of all, disappears. He gets trapped away. Later, after Marduk destroys the early life, starts over again, Apsu returns back into the picture. So Apsu, who was the originator, was out of the picture for a while and then later is back. If we go to the book of Genesis, we would see that God is a part of the element all the way up to Cain and Abel, and then God disappears until when there's a point where men start to invoke the name of God, but God comes back and goes, oh, everything went bad. I'm going to destroy the earth. So there's a time right there where God was completely missing. In the Tiamat, or in the Babylonian story, that represents the time in life where when we start off, we are living through our higher awareness, but then we go off and experience life and we live through our memories. And later we want to get back to our higher self. That's what that represents there. So does it represent that in the Genesis story? Here we have the division happening, Cain and Abel. You're gone until it's time to start over, time for a healing process. We get down to Abram and Sarai, where? Chapter 12 in Genesis. And God puts them in a place of famine, which is actually a good place. If we were to use this numbering system, we would see Sarai's name is repeated 17 times. That's a good place right here. We're going to see that numbering system all through Abrahamic material. I talk about it matter-of-factly, but if you went through it, there was a point I was just flabbergasted. I was astounded by it. Now it's like, whew, yep, it's there. But in that case, God, again, disappears. They're in a land of famine, and then God isn't even there to help them or anything. They go to to Egypt, exchange with Pharaoh, what happens? That would be the same thing here, representing as if the corruption actually happens from that child. What happens? Sarai gets corrupted by Pharaoh, which represents our inner being getting corrupted by life experiences. And then God returns when? Only when it's time to start creating some sort of intermittent pain, which the plagues represent. So we're learning that we need to move on in life because we're having intermittent pain, the cycles of pain, the plagues, based on our union with life experience, which is what our inner being in a union with Pharaoh represents, in Egypt represents. That's not a real thing happening. It represents you're just having life experiences unaware of it, while the higher awareness is no longer a part of it, but it's going to come back later and be a part of it. Now, look at this right here in Revelation. Okay, right in chapter 1, everything is moving along down here, and this is the line I want to pick out. The higher awareness is returning. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. So we're not doing naked anymore down here at this stage. Nope, we are completely clothed, but everything is pure and white and all of that. So that's how we're not covered. This is the part down here. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet, dead. And he laid his right hand upon me, saying unto me, Fear not. I am the first and the last. I am he that liveth, and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And I have the keys of hell and of death. I am he that liveth. I was once alive and then dead, and now I'm alive. What does that sound like? To me, it sounds like that's the part of the story where we live as children through our higher awareness, not judging life. But then we go off and judge life and we lose that higher awareness. This is where we're getting back to the higher awareness. It was there, then it was gone. It was there the whole time, but we needed to have life experiences. We are now returning to it, and that's what we need to live through. That's what we're doing here, that's setting up a pathway like this. The story styles are quite a bit different. This is not a healing hero's journey monomyth type of structure. It is something different, but it still is made on the template. The elements are exactly here. Exactly. It's the outer shell that is different. It's the style difference is all it is. Yeah, it's not a hero's journey, but it is nevertheless a return path. And I will say, you have to interpret this. The Christians don't like this right here. But when you look at the material, if you were to make a comparison with Buddha, Buddha tells you a path to follow when people try to follow his path. Jesus told a path to follow, but people were told, if you just worship Jesus, you're going to go to heaven forever without that. That's not what Jesus ever said. So Jesus is being worshipped as a savior instead of being followed as a teacher. And that's the problem there. Jesus is a viable teacher as far as I'm concerned, but not a viable savior. When does Jesus return? Everybody that finds nirvana finds their Buddha nature. Everybody that follows Jesus' path finds the kingdom of heaven within. Jesus returns every time somebody follows his path. All right, if you're following all that, what I want to do now is talk specifically to my friend about that number. So as I go through mine, the way that they seem to work for me as I go through mine, and you know what, my 747 is what? That's a 7 said twice, plus a 40 in there. A 40 and a 7, I would go, well, that's a perfect, it's a place in a verse where you would look at and go, boy, is that a coincidence? It's just right there. But it means that pure love state. And at some point, I look at the numbers and I realize that the numbers do not mean a quantity. All of them mean a certain place on the template, a pure place, and a place that is now corrupt, a place that is now preparing to heal, a place that is, spending time going by. Something like that is happening in the numbering system. And when they're putting those in there, that's as simple as it gets. I think that, like a 7, no matter what, wherever you go, the 7 means pure state. 3 means pure state. 40 means pure state. When you start mixing them together, take a 40 and a 7, because we use 40 and 7 too much. try a 40 and a 7. That looks different. Pure state, because it's a 40 and a 7. 43, pure state. It would just keep going like that. There's a 17. That's an interesting one. That one, of course, naturally, it's like, well, yeah, a combination of 10 and 7. But that one is actually very specifically developed and repeated in the flood story where, there's a 17 being developed right there. And then you go on and see 17 appear in the background quite a bit. Not up front as a used number, but in the background as a repeated cyclical something. Like I said, Sarai's name being repeated 17 times right at chapter 12 as that pure state is beginning. That Sarai at 17 on chapter 12 there would be the same as Job having 3 daughters in chapter 1 at the beginning of Job. It's like, okay, you have these numbers and the male and female, 7 boys, 3 girls. That means pure state in the beginning. They're not quantities. It's tricky. They're mental locations on a template that are going to repeat. And if we lock down the pattern, we can see what all the numbers are. Just count how many times they appear in a chapter, and it'll tell you whether it's a good thing or a bad thing or a preparation or something like that. Yeah. You go to Genesis and you find out, naked is a good thing. Why is naked a good thing? Shouldn't be naked in the tent. All the religious people that think that's some sort of gay sex thing. No, naked means in the spiritual world, I am uncovered from my shame. I've just gone through a flood, a purging. I think I would rather interpret that than treat it as history. So the reason I think that 17 was developed, though, is because if you took another example and said, well, I'm going to use 13 because that's a 10 and a 3. 12 is actually developed previously as a good number, and the next step would be a bad thing to go to 13. And if you go through the material, you will see that 13 is a bad thing. So you don't use the combination of 10 and 3. It's weird. But you can use the combination of 10 and 7. But the 17 was developed specifically in the Noah story. Nowhere is there a 13 developed. So, yeah, there's more to it than meets the eye. Makes my brain jello. It seems like early on in the small numbers, when things are close together, like between 1, 2, 3, what do you have room for in 1 and 2? And then 4 and 5, there's only one step between 3 and 5. 5 is a good place. So what is that 4? Does it represent? It sure does represent something, but what? And it looks like here in Revelations, it means a good thing. Every time something is repeated 4 times, it looks to be a good thing. So it looks like that one is kind of zeroing in. Is that kind of what it means? So in your numbers right there, honestly, when I think it gets into thousands, I think those are only carriers, that they don't really do anything. If we were to, like the hundreds, for example, up in Genesis, if I'm looking for my analog mining and I'm finding that there's a 900 and a 50 and a 7, I realize since 900 is repeated 7 times that 900 doesn't mean anything. What that 900 means is it means 7. It means 7. All of those 9s right there, replace them with 7 and say, okay, now I got a 7 pointing to it. They're just making it a layer deep like that. 800's the same way. You see an 800 and a 40 and a 5, and you start finding that same combination all over. You get down into this Sodom analog farm and you find righteousness repeated 7 times as it starts gathering the 40, 30, 20, all the 5, all the numbers right there. You go, yeah, the goofy things that are going on right there are analog farms. Those are the numbers that continue to repeat. But what do they mean? They all mean pure state. So when you're getting combinations like a 40 and a 4, that means pure state. 1,000 in front of it, I don't know. There's 32 times 1,000 appears here. I don't know if that means anything to me. I'd have to analyze it more. But every time you see a 40 and a 4 together, it'd be like seeing a 40 and a 7 or something like that. So what you have in the first example right here, what do we have going on? And actually, before I do that, you know what, in the most simplest description of what to do to be happy, there's something in the Gospel of Thomas that Jesus says it's like a couple of words. You can do this in 2 words. You can tell people what to do. It's very complete in its simplicity, but it's a lot of work. What do you do What is the most important thing to do? Jesus says, become passers-by. People don't, that still needs to be interpreted. We're not going to go passing by the physical life. We're going to have an experience here. What he's saying is don't attach to things. Don't grab onto things as you go. Just, life happens. Don't grasp it and become that. Live free of it. What then is the easiest way to say enlightenment? People say love, and I go, no, that's not it. That's not descriptive. It's actually, I think it takes two words. Let go. Of course, if you let go, love is going to be a product of that. But instead of looking for love, if you let go, that describes what you need to do in order to experience everything. We're products of what we hang on to. I'm going to quote Lao Tzu from the Tao Te Ching, page 2. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and the master lets them come. They disappear and the master lets them go. The master has but doesn't possess, acts but doesn't expect. When the master's work is done, the master forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. Okay, in its simplest form, being and non-being create each other. When some things are beautiful, other things become ugly. When you see things as good, other things become bad. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything. You really don't attach to those things. You don't attach to beauty and grasp onto it. You view all from a distance and see the beauty and its uniqueness. You don't attach to one thing and go, that is very attractive, and therefore that over there is obviously not. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the beauty, but try to enjoy the beauty of all life, not something that's very divided. Let go. When the work is done, they forget it. That's why it lasts forever. I think the whole letting go thing is a difficult concept because you don't and you can't let go of certain things. There are certain survival things. There are certain fears and joys that we're going to have. And if you don't have a job and you're hungry, you're not going to sit and listen to this stuff and go, oh, yes, I'm going to do that. There's a point in time where life has to be okay in enough of a way, or desperate in such a way that somebody will use this as an option to turn inward. And that is what they did. We live in a very complex day and age with much going on. And if they're telling people to let go back then and to fast as to the world, all that kind of stuff, let it go in all the different ways that they say it, imagine what they would have told us today. They would have said, you guys got an issue. Yeah. Okay, let's go look at the numbers that were there. The 140 and 4. Yeah, that's it. Let's see what we got here. All right, this looks like a mess. I know. It's in chapter 7. That's important. 7 is a good number. This is going to be following a pattern of something good. There's something happening in here. Now, the number that you're looking for is right here, 140 and 4. Now, that very much sounds like something from Genesis, doesn't it? All right, this is going to be tricky to see. Bear with me on this. I'm going to extract a life lesson from this as best that I can. So here is how it starts. It's going to be chapter 7 was the first appearance of the 40 and 4. It's right down here, 40 and 4. Chapter 7, if it's in chapter 7, that means that something is going to happen here that would be on the 7-3 grid. Something is going to happen here that fits a certain criteria. What we have is that there is, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on the tree. Okay, what you're looking for here is inner calm. Sit, peace, meditate. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried out with a loud voice to the 4 angels, go to whom it was given to hurt the earth and to the sea, saying, Don't hurt the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. All right, let's stop there and just talk about that. That's a fun one, huh? There's a couple of things I want to talk about. One of them is of the living God. The living God. That's a very telling term. What would that mean right there? This is an odd thing, but that means your early self. That would be like the early God that's in charge. You have to defeat that early self. Okay, so what is happening here then, this angel coming down, everything is creating calm. This is a point where you sit and go, you know what? I've got to bring down an element down here. I've got to calm myself, bring down a higher awareness element to gather up and kind of entrap, identify what's going on in my head. So if we do that, what we see happening is that you heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of the tribes of the children of Israel. Okay, children of Israel are good things, so what we're trapping is good qualities. But look at what goes on here. If we continue to go through here, the 12,000s of the Reuben and Judah and Gad, and it goes on and on. What's really important to say here is these stories are huge. They get over the top. When God puts somebody in a place and says, I will give this to you for all the generations and for as many stars as there are in the skies, or as many sand grains as there are on the beaches, or something like this, this means your complexity, what you're going to become. These big numbers like this and all those sort of things like that, they are not real, but they're holding the idea of massive complexity in the mind. Many places, much stuff. The story is big. We have to get away from the size of the story and the purpose of the outer shell and understand the simplicity of it. All of those elements, whether there's a handful of them or billions of them, it's still all of the things that frazzle my mind. You can make that number as big as you want to. Just call it a 8 billion or an 8 million or a 13 million or a 13. As long as you're using the bad number there, the amount doesn't matter. The trick of the numbers is something a little bit different. They're holding a place. So when they get bigger and bigger, we have to be careful of that. Count how many times it says 100. And be careful how they're doing it in the verbiage or whatnot. Here's something else to note about the pattern. The chapters are put in by Langton, but they're in the right place for the story. He broke it out properly. So if we go to chapter 7, 7 is good on our grid. That your number is said one time, 144. The next place it is said, it's repeated twice. Chapter 14, it is said 2 times, 144, the 144. Just drop the 1,000, be okay. And then in the last occurrence was in chapter 21. Right here, we got chapter 21, and look at verse 17, interestingly enough. That's one of our numbers. And he measured the wall thereof, 144. And then you know what else? This one's just a 40 and a 2. And so you know what else we have? There's a 40 and a 2 without 100 on it that is in chapter 11, and there's a 40 and a 2 without 100 on it in chapter 13, which would both be into the red zone. That's just something to note. Yeah, there's something patterned in there. There's something patterned in. I don't know what it is all the time. Okay, so straight up, in the work that I'm doing with the Abrahamic material, I have no reason whatsoever to call those numbers in combination like that anything more than pure state, which is exactly what you're looking for. The material constantly tells us to do that, to let go, to disconnect, to heal, to live from the higher awareness, to not live through the memories, to destroy them. All of that is a part of, really self-healing. Ultimately, it's a mental process. And as it gets bigger and bigger and all that, it's just more and more complex up here. It's ways of holding the same template in many different ways. If I have to take my bad qualities, my 10 or 20 bad habits into the desert to go heal, that's not any different than having to go spend 40 years in the desert with 1 million Israelites. That's the same. It's the same part of the story. And the sizes, yeah, they do get big. Whenever you're given control of someplace, this signifies a place where here's a new start for you in life. And guess what? From here, you pick and choose whatever your life becomes, and then however the story goes, it goes. But those are points along the way that's letting you know on that part of the story that here you're in charge. Now whatever you want is whatever you're going to get, and you got a left and a right choice. That's what's going to be in there. So I don't know anything different about the stories. I do find that Revelation is a fun thing to go through. I think it's going to help me. I need to get back to Genesis and work there. But I think, boy, if I was thinking, why did you get that number at you so much? It was that you were to direct me to go here so I could get the information that I needed. I would look at that like I wasn't getting the message, so you got it for me or something like that. But that's just because what I found in Revelation is like, okay, I think I see the number issue. Honestly, here's what I think. I think the Babylonians were using numbers, although the stuff isn't complete enough to tell. And then I think the Jews early on, before the addition of the elaborate numbering system, that early on there was one in place that was a simpler one, and fours were a big factor in it, and they somehow had to maintain that. As they made it more complicated, they kind of have this, I'd look at this thing and go, to me it looks like there's this little bit of an overlap down at the bottom that I can't quite figure out. And the 4, the 9, there's some things going on, and I think it's not just a matter of green, red, green, red, green, red. I think there's green, red, time goes by, healing, time starts, that there's different numbers as you get farther down. The 9s and things like that come up, you're like, what is that happening? But it happens just before a purging. So you're like, okay, I'm still working on it. But anyway, that's what I would think. If there's something more specific in those numbers, I wouldn't get them out of the blend in Abraham. I do see the numbers that you're getting and the quantity there and what's going on. You know what? Maybe before ending this video, I should go back and let's go look at what the other numbers represent. They're going to be something different, are they? Aren't they? Let me go look at that. What do we have just going on beforehand here? The 40 and 2 months I stood upon the sand of the sea, blah, blah, blah. All that dwell on the earth and worship him, names are not written in the book of life. Bad stuff going on, shall captivity, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I think in a quick scan, I might have the idea here. So we're looking for a healing, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, with him 140 and 4. That would be pure, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So these are pure new qualities. As I heard, voice, both green, from heaven, good, and the voice, green, of the waters of the voice. All these are 50, 33 harps. Okay, this right here, green. And they sung as if they were a new song before the throne and before the 4 beasts. The 9 might be that one where you're getting ready for healing, because the 9's there. I'm not sure on that one. Elders are good. Song 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. So those were the qualities that got held away with all the other ones, but they got redeemed back out now. Okay, and it looks to me like 81 there, with earth being said 81 times, that it is bad. So what would that represent? Heaven is a good place, earth is a bad place. What we want to do is live from the kingdom of heaven within and not from the earth. We want to live free of our memories, not from our memories. So living from the earth and being of the earth represents the idea that we're of our conscious experiences in life, that we're completely attached to all of our experiences. That is from the earth. When we let go of that and live from up above, we are now redeeming our qualities from the earth. We had good qualities to begin with. They got corrupted there. We've got to bring those qualities with us. We just have to clean them on the way. All right, it's a weird thing, but that's just what this story is teaching. Yeah, it was big for them. So now that would be like if you were early on in Genesis for the first story, really primitive, these would be like the beautiful daughters of men that became impregnated by the sons of God. those were your good qualities, your earthly qualities, your love, your joy, your innocence, all of that you still want, but they were trapped away because they had to be cleaned, they had to be purified. Okay, then we get to the last one. 21. Notice how their increment 7, 14, 21. I saw a new heaven and a new earth for the first and heaven. So this is our new life. We are now emerging out the other side of the purging. We're going to live a new experience. And he measured the wall thereof in 140 and 4 cubits. We're building something. What are we? A city lieth foursquare. We're building ourselves a new place to live. And that place is called purity. And 140 and 4, according to the measure of a man. There you go, pure man. That is the angel. Okay, you see what crazy stuff I'm doing? The numbers help, though, and you have to get it on the computer and do this. So, okay, I hope that helps. That's how I would interpret this right here. I think that's exactly right, that those represent, right there, I had good qualities to begin with, and they got trapped away because I became somebody that needed healing. And after the healing, they reemerge in the end and, let back out, and you're building a place for yourself, a structure the same size of what that was along the way. The number repeats like that for a weird reason, and it repeats 4 times, which tells me 4 is good. There, that's what I think. All right. Hope it was helpful. See you in the next video.